Hey, welcome to Scribble Practice. I set aside these colors last week to do something off camera with them actually, and I never did. So I thought, let's try something today with these. And so I'm just sitting with whatever feels fun in the moment, or a little, maybe I feel curious about, or maybe I feel called to. That's what I'm starting with. And that's what I'll continue with as I keep going. And I encourage you to do the same. Get out your mark making materials and just start making marks on a page and see what feels good and see what doesn't feel good. And just make for the sake of making. You might end up with something that you really hate, and that's okay. You might end up with something that you really like, and that's okay too. We're really not worrying in Scribble practice about the outcome. We're trying our best to think about this present moment and to practice being within this present moment so that we can create from that place, from the present. And that's why this is a mindful art practice. It's mindful because you're taking your time to be with this moment and make marks based on what this moment needs and based on what you need within this moment. Now, how do you know what you need in that moment? It's a really good question. I do think that different people feel this in different ways. So all I can share is my own experience. So sometimes I feel what mark needs to be made in the moment in the form of sort of a vision, I guess. I see a shape and I see colors in my mind's eye. And so that's one way I know I need to do something. Sometimes I'll really notice a color that's close by. And even if there are hundreds of other colors, it sort of pops out. And so then I know, okay, I'm gonna give that one a try. Sometimes I'll go to make a mark and I can feel within my body a dissonance. So a dissonance meaning maybe a tension or just a feeling of that's not what needs to happen right now. A knowing. And so when I feel those things, I pay attention and I stop making the mark there and I make it elsewhere. Somewhere where there's a bit more harmony feeling. So like I could go, does there need to be a circle here? The answer is yes. So this is another way you could go about it, is actually just asking the question. Then I could say, does another circle need to go here? The answer is no. Do I need to go back here? Yes. It's not quite finished. I move on too fast. Do I need another circle here? Yes. And so sometimes I do this out loud, and it's a great idea to try out loud as you're practicing being in the present moment. But I can also just move my hand across the page and feel almost like what I picture in my mind is like one of those gold or metal detectors, you know? When I was a kid, we used to go to Florida a lot, and I remember seeing those people on the beach and wanting one of those metal detectors so badly. Anyway, you're kind of like metal detecting in a way. Just moving your pen around the page to feel where another mark needs to be made. And in a way, it feels like the pen is beeping. Beep, 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 beep. When it's time to make a mark in that spot. And then maybe that's one way you can tell if you need to move on. You're just making these marks and then you don't get any beeping anymore. That's something to try. I can also tell when it's time to move on because I just start to feel a little bored, I guess. And this overall feels pretty joyful to me, this practice. I'm not saying that it's not hard, because it can be really, really hard. Or challenging, I guess. It can be really, really challenging. It can bring up some really challenging things, but there's still a sense of joy in that. And whenever I get to a feeling of boredom or really that dissonance, I really do feel like it's time to move on for me. Now that might change down the road, and you might have a different opinion on that. And if you do have a different opinion on that, maybe you feel like working through boredom is really important, and I can see that perspective. And as I said, that might change for me down the road, but when I start to feel bored with a color or a shape or a way of doing things at this time in my scribble practice, I just feel that it's time to move on. Okay, I'm gonna make a couple more marks here. I'm trying to think if there's any other ways I sort of go about. I'm very color focused, so color really means a lot to me. I really love shape as well, don't get me wrong, but I've really noticed that I'm very color motivated. So I tend to that tends to be my starting point, I guess I should say. Yeah, the colors tend to be my starting point. Now, this might not be the same for you. You might find that shape is your starting point. You might find one day that shape is your starting point and one day color is your starting point. Kind of an interesting group of colors I chose here too. I'm digging them. Just because they're not really, I don't feel like they're ones I've used before, although I definitely use these colors, but maybe just not together. Sometimes I can feel that when I do shapes I need to loosen up, or when I loosen, I need to do something a little sometimes lighter, tighter shapes. I'm really just listening to the moment, listening to what my body is saying in that moment. It's a big conversation between the energy of the moment and the energy in my body. Trying as much as possible to let my mind take a back seat. It's always there. It's always going to be there. And it's a hard thing to know when that starts and stops, or stops and or ends and starts. But yeah. Okay, I feel like this needs a little bit of red, so I'm gonna go get that. Just right here, a little bit of red. So again, it's not really a color that I would think, oh, this really needs to go with these colors, but I just felt it, and so I do it. And this is where I practice that. Not worrying about how it might look, just doing what I feel. And that's scribble practice for today. Thanks so much for being here, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.